Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine, and welcome to Punchline Talks, the big interview. Today I'm joined by councillor Rowena Hay, the leader of Cheltenham Borough Council and the leader of the Liberal Democrat Party as well. Thanks ever so much for joining us, Punchline Talk. Rowena, welcome.
Morning. Nice to see you, Mark.
I know the reason I stuttered then for a bit is because we tried all this yesterday, and as it's like Groundhog Day for me. And I know you haven't seen the film because we talked about that earlier. I think we've talked about it before. I know. Anyway, moving swiftly on. You took over of the leader of the Cheltenham Borough Council in December, obviously just in the midst of the pandemic. Can you tell me what that was like, please?
I thought long and hard about it, Mark, because it's a huge responsibility. And, you know, Steve Jordan, who was the previous leader to me, had been that leader for 12 years and done a fantastic job. So he was a pretty hard act to follow. But I'd spent the last 4 years doing finance and assets. And prior to that, I was doing healthy lifestyles. So much more old people, young people, community, all our cultural assets. And when I stepped into the finance, that gives you a really, really good grounding on everything, because as a finance and assets lead, you've got a finger in every pie that the council does. Whether officers and members like that, that is your job. So I thought long and hard about it. I spoke to a few of my group because we elect our leader and our cabinet as a group of Liberal Democrats, as you'd expect. And I felt that I'd got enough support from the group to put myself forward for leader. I believed I could do it. Always daunting when you take on a new role. And it's a very, very different role to that of being a cabinet member, because as a cabinet member, you have direct responsibility for specific areas. But as leader, it's a much more strategic role, and you reach out across the country, you reach out to a very different group of people. So I obviously hold as leader overall responsibility for what the cabinet is delivering, but I don't hold a specific portfolio.
What's been the hardest lesson that you've learned, do you think?
Doing things like this, actually, Mark, because people as leader want you to be out there and public facing. And whilst I'm very comfortable in my community as a local councillor public facing, and it's very different doing this role, and I mean, it's good for me.
Well, I think it's funny you used to say that, because I think Richard Cook, I'm sure he won't mind me saying as well, he's pretty similar in Gloucester. He's quite a quiet guy. He just wants to get on the job. In fact, actually, I don't think he wanted to be leader. I think he's doing a sterling job. But yeah, I can understand that, really. What's been the biggest issue? You took over from the pandemic. There was so much going on. You know, we talked about grants and things and getting money out to people, but where did you start when suddenly Steve Jordan stepped aside? You got the big shoes. What was your first job?
I think, but by that time, Mark, in all honesty, we were probably, you know, quite well embedded in how we were managing. So there was nothing new. It was just actually a seamless handover to carry on doing what we were doing. The hardest thing is the government guidance that came, you know, announcements that would come through. Businesses would want to react or expect us to react as a council to it straight away. And of course, the guidance always comes out later. So it was always, you know, that's been an ongoing thing all the way through. I'm not dishing the government. I'm just saying that, you know, the announcements happen. Public want it to happen the next day because it's been announced, but you have to wait for the guidance. So it's always playing catch up to get that done. I think the hardest thing for me was that not and just watching the numbers and taking part in the COVID engagement board.
I was going to say that must be quite difficult as someone who's got such responsibility for the area. When you're seeing loads of people actually, you know, dying, you're not being funny, a nice person like the rest of us. You're not like a Churchillian character, or you know, it must hurt when you go home at night.
It does, and it's, you know, I like many other people have had people I know who have lost loved ones, And I think, you know, for all of us, that truly has been the hardest. And actually, it's the mental health as well, the way that it's affected people, and that isolation really
I
was
think that's going to come out, isn't
really
it?
hard. Yeah, I mean,
In the long term, when this is all over, if it ever is over, you know, I mean, it's not going to be over. I don't think it's going to be over for, well, I don't know.
I think it'll be like the flu. You know, it's here to stay with us. I think, you know, on a personal level for me, one of the hardest things is I had a premature grandchild born, and so she was in hospital for quite a long time, and then obviously we were in lockdown, and she had real, I mean, she's 18 months old now, but she had real, and I think there's a generation of children that will suffer this as well, is real separation anxiety, because she'd never been handled by anybody but her mother, father and brother.
Mm.
And there's a, you know, a lot of children who couldn't go to school or were late going to school, and they had to learn all those socialization skills at school as well. It was great in many ways because parents got to spend more time with children, but it was really hard work, you know, because I did homeschooling as well so that my daughter could carry on working from home. So I think there is a whole generation of children that will have those sort of anxiety really as well. It's not just us older people.
No, it's funny you should say. My next door neighbour's got 3 boys, and we'd go outside and clap the NHS because otherwise we didn't really, you know, didn't see them at all. And the worst thing he said, I love my kids, but I absolutely hate this homeschooling. He said it's just driving me absolutely mad. And we could hear the arguments on the other side of the fence, you know. But they're a lovely family. I would never ever distance. So I didn't envy them that 1 iota. Can I ask you, let's go back to your earlier part of your career. Where are you actually from, Rowena? Are you from Cheltenham yourself? Are you born and bred here?
No. I was born in Dorset,
Okay, how did
a
you end up
village
here then?
called Bradford Abbas. Well, in fact, I wasn't. I was out on a farm. We ended up here because back in the 60s, I guess my parents, it must have been the 60s. Yeah, it was. My parents decided to buy old houses and do them up. So we'd live in these derelict, beautiful houses as building sites for a couple of years, and then they'd move on to the next project. So we gradually moved from Dorset up the country really, and ended up in Cirencester.
That must have been quite an unusual thing to do in those days, wasn't it? I mean, it's quite, you know, people do it all the time now.
Yeah, it was. It was. It was before its time, if you like, but that was the decision that they made.
And were they successful?
Yeah, we lived in some lovely houses.
And it never gave you the bug then? You didn't think, oh, I'd like to do this and carry it on?
No, we as children had to, one day of the weekend, we had to help. So I learned skills, which actually later became, you know, my husband is a carpenter builder. So when we've bought houses, we've only actually lived in 2 houses. We've had no reason to move, other than to move from a 2-bedroom to what is now a 5-bedroom. But we had no reason to move, and they back onto each other. So it goes against the grain to pay somebody to come and do work in our house.
Well, I've got some plastering that needs doing actually. So if you're available and you're quite good at it, I always like to do the plastering side of stuff. Switch on, wipe off like that. Well, I was going to say the film then, but I know that you won't know it. So what happened then? How did you get into politics?
Ooh, I got into Colin was, well, I suppose when I went to college in Cheltenham, what was the technical college then, I actually met Colin there. Not that we were together, but we were very good friends.
This is your husband?
Yes, for a long time. And and he was involved in student union politics. So I was interested, so I got involved in student union politics. Then I disappeared off to travel and work. But when Colin and he first got elected in 1981, so I guess I was an activist then. And
how old were you then, Rowena?
24.
Okay, so quite young then, really.
Yeah, I mean, I was an activist, but I wasn't a councillor. I left that to Colin. So
Right.
he was the upfront councillor, if you like, and I think I spent some time working in the MP's office at the time, the Lib Dem MP, obviously, and
I was going
then
to say, was that Lib Dem?
yeah,
You never dabbled in other
no, never.
other parties.
Shock horror to my parents. They were staunch Conservatives, and my first ever vote was a Liberal vote.
Right. And
So
what drew you to the Liberals rather than the Tories at the time?
I don't recollect. I didn't like the then MP that Cirencester had, and I liked the idea. I suppose as in a from the age of 16, I had that idea that being a Liberal meant that you were. Some people would say all things to all men, but actually you had beliefs, but my belief fundamentally, even then, was around community.
Mm.
And when I was at school, we had to do this. We had to do. It was called citizenship at the time, and it basically, it was a project-based exam. It was I don't think it was whether it was a CSE or a G. Well, it certainly wasn't GCSE. It certainly wasn't an O level. I remember it being called citizenship, and you had to do projects. And I was clearing out the roof during the COVID and came across these projects. Heaven knows why I kept them, but they were, and it sort of told me who I was even then, because I did a project on farming that was really close to my heart. Obviously, I did a project on old people. I did a project on drugs that I got terribly told off, because how did I know the slang? And it's like, well, I know people who know those words, so I use those words in my. And then the other one I did was on politics.
Right.
It was actually on councils, because my introduction said, I realised that people didn't understand what the difference between a borough council and a district council was. So I guess, and I was about 14, 15 then, I guess.
Wow. And unfortunately, a lot of people still don't know.
No, absolutely, yeah.
So
yeah.
So your husband was the councillor. How did you fall into being a councillor?
In 2000, I got persuaded basically to say, time you stood. So, and I thought, actually, why not?
And
I stood
what
as a
area?
paid candidate. I did stand as a paid candidate, Mark, and won.
Brilliant. What area is that? Sorry.
Warden Hill.
Right. Okay. That's where you are now.
No. I'm in Oakley. I represent Oakley.
Right.
In
Okay.
Cheltenham, and it's my side of town. That was the opposite side of town for me. And at the time, I was the only. Most wards were either solidly Conservative or Liberal Democrat. I ousted a Conservative member, and it was one Conservative and one Lib Dem. So I was the only single member ward, and it was the opposite side of town.
Has politics changed a lot since you were, then those young days? Has it got a bit more nastier with social media and just the general fight?
I think the people haven't changed, the officers haven't changed, the public in general haven't changed, but social media has changed things, and it can be quite nasty because it's faceless. We need social media; it's really important, but I think it's people. It causes huge harm to people.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest with you, it's just my own view. I'd like to know yours. Is that people who have a little picture of a cat or a dog or a pirate or whatever, and they say all sorts of stuff about you, just shouldn't be allowed.
No.
If you've got a conviction, you've got an idea. You and I stick our heads above the parapet, and we vocalize what our opinions are. I think other people should also be brave enough, bold enough to actually stick their heads above the parapet and say, okay, this is what I think.
I don't think you should be allowed to publish things on any site that actually causes somebody to do harm to themselves, because we know that does happen, and you know, that to me is just unacceptable. That in any form.
So going to today's politics and where you are now, you know, has the ward changed? Has the actual amount of not that I was going to say power, but that's not the right word. You know, the influence that you have in society, in politics. You know, has that changed a lot? Do you have a lot of power?
As leader, I have a scary amount of power. Being, you know, I suppose, like most local councillors, what you want to do is put something back and improve the community and the town and the place that you live in. And, you know, so if I use as an example, you know, I said I got elected in 2001 in the May, and I was elected straight into cabinet, because the then leader said, you've got transferable skills, which I didn't understand at all at the time. I was like, hey, hang on a minute, I'm a first time councillor, and now you're chucking me into this new regime of a cabinet, and because that was the first year of the change. And I have to agree, over the years, I can see why he said that I'd got those transferable skills, because one of the other things that I do, which is voluntary as well, completely, but I've been a local magistrate for 35 years.
Right.
So, and that's about communication.
I mean, wow. How do you find the time?
Well, it's not as full on as it used to be. And obviously there hasn't been courts because of COVID as well. So,
okay, what does a local magistrate have to do? What does that entail?
basically, every crime comes before the magistrate's court. There are some that are mandatory to go to the Crown Court, but it's non-payment of fines, non-payment of taxes. It's antisocial behaviour, it's domestic violence, it's burglary, everything basically. I mean, obviously murder, rape go up to the Crown Court, but they start life at the Magistrates' Court. So, and the magistrates are all made up of a cross-section of the general public, different backgrounds, different professions, so that it's representative of the people of this country.
And is it paid for? Do you get some money for doing this? Or is it just for your spare time?
No, you can claim travel and you can claim lunches. I don't do either because I go on my bike.
It's funny, I only asked because when I was chairman of the Federation of Small Business in Gloucester, people used to think I got paid for it. I used to say, no, I never put one petrol claim in all the 12 years. Because I always thought, no, I didn't want anybody questioning my motives, that I was only doing it for the money or whatever, really. So, so what about I'm going to be really a little bit rude. You don't have to answer this. I know I'm doing this, but you know, what does a councillor get, and what does a general pay for a councillor? Because people think, oh God, they're rolling in it, doing stuff. What's a general?
It's treated as a part-time job. As leader, it's pretty much full-time. As a backbencher, it's less, but it depends on the councillors, really. The ward I represent creates quite a significant amount of casework, and be that from a housing issue, be that from a nuisance neighbour, be that, oh, there's this planning application, can you help us understand it? So backbench councillors get an allowance of just under 5,000.
Wow, okay.
So we are provided with laptops by the council, but if you want to do printing or anything like that, then, well, it's better than paper, Mark, because used to be, it was all on paper. Now it's not.
No, I was getting the woohoo over the $5,000.
So that pays for your telephone calls, it pays for your travelling, it pays for your, we as a party locally give 10% of what we get in order to run our office, which actually is how by having the office, we can communicate with our residents, because we put out 3 monthly focuses, and if there's an issue, somebody sent me an email the other day that said, actually they'd like to see more trees in their area. So we've done a street letter as a survey to all of the residents to say, what do you think of this idea before we take it further? So it's, you know, it's all that printing and delivering and stuff, which we do ourselves. We don't do paid deliveries.
I'm going to ask you again. How much does the leader of the Cheltenham Borough Council get?
Do you know, I don't actually know. I should do, shouldn't I? I think it's about 1,600 a month before tax. I think it's, and you know, I thought I should know that, but actually, to me, I don't do it for the money. Yes, I take the money because actually I can't do my day job. It's a lot less than I would earn doing my day job, but that's my choice.
No, and I think you're worth every penny. But then I'll be honest with you, I think all the councillors are worth every penny. You have your good and your bad, but they choose to do this. They volunteer to do this. There's their life. It's a life choice. I admire them all from every single party because they're trying to make a difference. You know, whatever party they're from, they're trying their best. And some people stick their head above the parapet, and other people don't. They're happy to moan. I get it all the time. I get people moaning at me, and I say, "Well, go on then. You tell them. You tell me. I'll write your name down to the story." And they go, "Oh, no, 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 no." You know, so
I think you talked about, you know, some of the reasons why councillors do it, and I look back and I can't remember. I think it was my 8-year-old granddaughter said to me, you know, what do you actually do, Nonu? And it made me think about, you know, over the years, what have I achieved as a councillor, and being a cabinet member that's made a difference in this town. And if I go right back to when, well, I suppose not right back, but actually, as you may recall, or you may not, but the festivals, Cheltenham festivals, used to be part of Cheltenham Borough Council.
right.
They were, and really, that isn't what local councils do, is run festivals. They do run events, obviously, for community, but not something as big as the festivals. And you know, at the time when I made that decision, it was a lot of money. And you're going to ask me when, and I really can't remember the dates. But they, so the council, we gave them 450,000, and as I called it then, set them free to fly as a charity. We still support them, obviously, and communicate with them, but you know, they've gone from strength to strength since then. So that's a really, you know, that was local taxpayers' money that was obviously used to do that, but equally it was local taxpayers' money that was running the festivals. So, you know, that's saved a lot of money tenfold.
Now we've got another big, because we're running out of time actually, it goes very, very quickly. I'd just like to touch on the Cyber Central, you know, the cyber park that's come in, obviously Junction 10. What are the, you know, how do you think that's going to affect Cheltenham if you could pull it off?
Paul, okay, that's a really big question, and it is probably the most exciting thing, and I am so proud, Mark, to be able to be leader at this time, because I see that Golden Valley development as being Cheltenham's future. You know, that space is 200 hectares. It'll provide 3,700 jobs and 3,700 new homes, almost 12,000 new jobs, and a 2 million square foot piece of commercial space that will bring, you know, Cyber Central, for Cheltenham to be at the heart of the UK's Cyber Central. If you think that this is the biggest conurbation outside of London, of the cyber industry, and the UK cyber security sector is worth about 8.3 billion as of this year. And it's doubled in value in just 2 years. So, and we do have, as I said, the greatest density of cyber businesses in the UK outside, but we've also got more than 11 times the norm across that. So we're already really at the heart of it. I mean, we must take our community with us with that, because it's a massive impact on that part of town. But you know, we've got a really clear vision, Mark, of where we want to go, and we've got priorities. Cyber is obviously and is a major part of our economic growth, along with the Minster Exchange. we've got a £180 million housing programme, and we've put quite a lot of money into our other priority, which is oh gosh, I keep saying shouldn't I hate that, the climate change emergency. So that's really, really important. But our community is, because actually everything that we do is based around making sure that at the community of Cheltenham and the people of Cheltenham actually have the best possible lives that they can, that the council can help with and provide that.
Because sometimes people view Cheltenham as this very affluent area. You know, look down the promenade, they see all the lovely, gorgeous shops, and you know, and John Lewis and the Cheltenham Festival. But let's be honest about it. There's some very poor, deprived areas of Cheltenham.
We have over 4,000 children living in poverty. So yes, it's two extremes, isn't it? Really, it's more than two extremes. You have that, you know, extreme poverty. You've got huge wealth, but you've also got the bit in between where people who do have jobs, they work so hard and they have, you know, their lives revolve around working to survive. And so, which is why for us, No Child Left Behind, that works in partnership with lots of different organisations across the town, is really important.
Now, one other thing which a lot of people don't realise, which I am going to touch on actually, is the fact that, you know, Cheltenham is trying to rehouse some of the Afghan interpreters, which I think is absolutely amazing. I think, you know, to support our armed forces, but also these people. It must be extremely difficult. And how many people are trying to house it?
We've obviously, Cheltenham welcomes refugees. That, you know, that was one of our motions that we took to council and made a conscious decision. So we've got Syrians here. We've also, you know, we built a few years ago specific buildings for ex-servicemen,
Right,
who were in need of homes, who'd basically been injured out. And I think when the government announced a few weeks ago the Afghan, I mean, we have an absolute duty to house them. I mean, they're extraordinary people who probably saved many, well, in fact, they did save many of our soldiers and armed forces' lives by the fact that the intelligence that they could share and supporting our forces prevented probably some of them getting killed. And now their lives are at risk. So,
well,
you know,
I just want to say, you know, as an ex-forces person myself, you know, I think it's brilliant that you guys have done that.
with 30, Gloucestershire's due to take 35 families, and they've worked it out on a numbers basis in terms of population. So we're welcoming 7.
Right. Okay. So we're kind of running out of time now, so I'm going to quickly wrap this up, unfortunately, because these interviews always go very quickly, half an hour. I'm going to ask you, I'm not going to ask you what television program you watch, because I know you don't. What's the latest book, or the latest book that you finished or read?
I'm in the middle because I've got grandchildren that live on the Isle of Wight. So we do FaceTime quite a bit. So, and I bought her for her birthday, or was it Christmas? I bought her the J.K. Rowling, the Ichabod.
Right, okay.
So I'm reading that to her. And actually the other book that I've picked up again, which is it's a 1999 book, and it's a poem actually called, and it's written by a native Indian Canadian by Araya Mountain Driver, I think, yeah, that's her name, and it's a poem. And then in 1999 she wrote a book about what that poem meant to her, and I just came across it the other day and thought, oh, that'll do. I pulled it out of my bookcase and thought, oh, I haven't forgotten about that one.
I think it's always great when you discover a book that you fancied and left it and then you go back to. What's your top 3 business tips, please, Rowena?
I've actually, it's looking after your staff, looking after your customers. And the other one is take opportunities. Embrace opportunity.
Rowena Hay, leader of Cheltenham Borough Council, thanks ever so much for joining Punchline Talks. Hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Mark. Bye.
Bye.